isosceles right triangle PSR, and we're trying to find the coordinates for point R. One thing we can do right away is to calculate the slope between points P and S. I'm going to make sure I label it with the name. It's going to be called PS. And to calculate that, we're going to take y minus y over x minus x. Since we're calling it PS, we're actually going to take the S values minus the P values. So it's going to be 0 minus a plus b divided by 2a minus 0. If we simplify this, that's negative a minus b over 2a. This is the change in y. This is the change in x. And here's where my analysis is important. Going from point P to point S, I see it's going down, which means that that numerator must be something negative since that was a change in y. And I see it's going to the right, so I know that the denominator, the change in x, has to be something positive. That's what we know about the slope of PS. The next step is to realize that we have a perpendicular, so we want this next segment to be perpendicular to the first. And we have to call this one segment SR because we have to start at what we know, and we know the coordinates of the right angle. And we want SR to be perpendicular to the original. So if we do the reciprocal, 2a would go to the numerator, negative a minus b goes to the denominator. And then we're going to look to see what else we need to do to make sure it's an opposite reciprocal and not just the reciprocal. We'll compare these inside numbers. Well, actually first, SR is going up, and it's also going to the right. So the change in y is positive, the change in x is also positive. We'll compare those. I wanted 2a to be something positive. From the work we did before, we see that it is actually a positive value. Then we want this denominator to be something positive. From the work we have before, we see that's a negative value, so we're going to take the negative or the opposite of all of that, which means that the slope of SR is 2a over a plus b. Here is our change in y, and there is our change in x. Starting at point S, going to point R, here is how the values are going to change. The x value started here. It changes by that amount. So the coordinates for point R, the x value is going to be 2a plus a plus b. And then the y value started at 0. It changed by 2a. So if we add those together, we get 2a. And these are the coordinates for point R then, making an isosceles right triangle. We have another isosceles right triangle, triangle PSR. To start off with, I'm going to calculate the slope of segment PS. We could have done SP, where I'm just opting for segment PS. So we're going to take the S values minus the P values. The numerator then has 5a plus 4b minus b minus a. So there is the change in y. And then in the denominator, we have the change in x's. S value first, so 6a plus 2b minus 2a minus b. Make sure you remember to subtract the entire quantities. Now we'll simplify. 5a minus negative a would give us 6a, and then 4b minus b is 3b. And in the denominator, 6a minus 2a is 4a, 2b minus negative b is plus 3b. The numerator is a change in y, the denominator is a change in x. And as I look at these, from P to S is going up, so I know the numerator is positive, and it's going to the right, so I know the denominator is positive as well. So there's my analysis of what I know about segment PS. That leads to the next point of what we want. We want the slope of SR, starting at point R, going to point, or starting at point S, going to point R, to be perpendicular to that. So if we take the reciprocal, 4a plus 3b would go to the numerator, 6a plus 3b would go to the denominator. So there is the reciprocal. For the opposite reciprocal, I have to analyze this. The numerator represents the change in y, going from point S to R, and the denominator would represent the change in x. When to compare these values, as I look at S and R, from S to R it's going down and it's going right. It's going down, so the numerator should be something negative, and it's going right, so the denominator should be something positive. However, as I look at this, 4a plus 3b was something positive, I want it to be negative, so here is where the opposite and opposite reciprocal goes. The other comparison, 6a plus 3b, I know is something positive from the analysis from before. I want it to be something positive, so that one doesn't change. So to simplify it a little bit, the slope of SR is negative 4a minus 3b over 6a plus 3b. I'll put my little notation, delta y over delta x. Point S is starting with this x value, and it's changing by that x value. So if we add them together, we would get 12a plus 5b. Also, point S is starting with this y value. We're changing it by that y value. So if we add them together, we're going to get a plus b, and those are the coordinates for point R.